Hello, engagers, and welcome to our, technically our second edition of Engage Zoom sessions. We did have one a couple months ago. We did meet last week and decide that we're going to do this on a weekly basis, tentatively every Monday at 2 o'clock, but at least once a week to stay engaged and to stay active and to stay involved in our community and to keep things going. Even though we can't be on the field, Engage is about teaching values off the field, and we want to continue to work with you guys to make sure that happens. So today, Camden and I are going to talk about stress management, which is obviously during this time, this difficult time, is a very relevant factor in everybody's lives. Just to give you a little bit of background, I teach wellness to law students, lawyers, and the general community, and then taking a few classes at the U of A to get my coaching certificate so that it's a little more official that I can actually teach wellness to everyone. And the reason that that started was that, being a lawyer is very stressful. We have to represent clients who are often dealing with the worst time of their life, and they put a lot of pressure on you to do a good job. And actually, in the legal community, if you don't do a good job, or if you do an unethical job, sometimes you can lose your license and you could be eliminated from being able to practice law ever again. So it's a very stressful profession. So when I first started, I decided to start reading some books about wellness, stress management, anxiety relief, so that I could learn how to cope with some of the stress that I deal with every day. Also, obviously, in addition, with the current environment we are in, learning some of these strategies can be very helpful. So after reading a ton of literature on wellness, I started to notice about 5 concepts kept popping up over and over and over again. I started taking notes on the things that I saw that kept coming up in each of the books that I read. And over time, I took lots of notes, and then I started teaching. And that's what I do now. And so I thought it would be a good idea for me to teach some of the things that I've learned in my wellness training, some of the things Cam has learned in his life and in his entrepreneurship and in coaching rugby, and that we could be here for you guys and provide some techniques that you can use at home to get through this mess of a situation we're in. So the five elements that I have found that I teach, and keep in mind when I teach these things, it sometimes is a 4-hour session. So this is the 5-minute cliff note of what I teach. But what I have found is 5 things that can help you with your stress relief. 1, recognizing what you have control over and what you don't have control over, and focusing only what you do have control over. 2, having awareness of your surroundings so that you're not only able to identify the positive, but when you do find a negative, how to either ignore the negative or flip the negative into a positive. 3, limiting your choices in the world. So, we have to make tons of choices every day, and we get overwhelmed with the amount of choices we have to make. If you can eliminate how many choices you have to make every day, things get a lot smoother. 4, social interaction. We are social human beings. We are social beings. So right now, especially, it's very stressful for us because we want to be with our friends. We want to be out on the field playing rugby. We want to be out and about and interacting with our communities. And we're limited in doing that right now. So that can be very stressful. And then action and focus, or otherwise being focused on the moment instead of worrying about the past or the future. So very quickly, I'm going to give you 1 or 2 things you can do in each of those categories in daily life to make stress a little easier to manage. First, with control. Studies show that if you get up early in the morning and the first thing you do when you get up morning is what we call make your bed, that can establish control for the rest of the day. And this is scientifically proven. Mm-hmm. So the idea is get up in the morning, find something very small and very easy that you can take complete control over in less than 5 minutes. And there's actually a book written called Make Your Bed, which is written by a military
Admiral McRaven, I think.
Yes. They use it.
There's the military brat showing off.
They use it in the military because it establishes control early in the day.
Mm-hmm.
On that same line, Mark Twain used to say, if you eat a live frog every morning, nothing worse can happen the rest of the day. And what he means by that is once you've made your bed and once you've started doing smaller tasks to take control of the day, early on in the day, pick something big to do so that the rest of the day feels easy.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and I think, Matt, if to change our flow up a little bit, I think it would actually be better to just go through as we're going through year 5. I can chime in a little bit and we can talk about each one in detail. Because as you're talking about this, I'm a huge fan of the make your bed every morning. Now, here's the situation. I get up before my fiance, so I don't actually make my bed, but I come out and I work out and I start reading and I do something that I can take control of in my day. And I want to use the exercise one as an example, because I think beyond just taking control of your day and having a task to do to start taking control of your day, when you make it something that's active, you also get the blood flowing a little bit, even if it's just going for a walk, taking your dog for a walk or something just as simple as that. That gets your blood flowing, it gets your energy up. And even as counterintuitive as it sounds, if you work out in the morning, you will have more energy throughout the day because it sets the bar so high and you'll start performing at that higher level. And I think that's just a huge piece of it, because when you alluded to this a little bit, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm self-employed, I work from home. I have to make myself do everything that I do for my businesses. And in order to perform at that level, I have to do things like this, just like anyone else would need to do them during COVID, because I am the only person that is controlling my future, just as simple as it is. And that's true for a lot of people, but you have to make these active changes no matter what you're doing if you want to take control of your life that way.
Yes. So whether it is doing even if you only have 5 minutes to do something, if it's 5 minutes of push-ups, 5 minutes of sit-ups, 5 minutes to go for a walk,
world of
5
difference.
minutes to write in your journal, 5 minutes to meditate. Doing something for yourself early in the morning I can speak for myself and probably everyone that's tried it, it's extremely gratifying because you feel like you've actually felt like in 5 minutes you've like already gotten something huge done for the day.
Exactly. And that's what happens if you get something small done and you keep chipping away at those small things. All of a sudden you were very productive today and you would have never thought that. That happens to me all the time.
So that's having control. The next one is having awareness of your surroundings. So one thing that my family and I do at the end of every day is we each go around the table and we say three positive things that happened to us that day. And if you do it every day and you get the habit of doing it, it trains your mind to think of the positive. And it also teaches you that no matter how bad of a day you had, you can probably always find at least 3 positive things. Mm-hmm. Even if they're not positive, you could probably find a way to flip the negative into a positive, whether it's, that you learned from your mistake or you learned from the bad situation and how to approach it better next time. You can always find 3 things. So that's one thing I do to have a better awareness about my surroundings.
Yeah, I think that's a very basic tool that works so well that if you can implement that in your life, it can do so much more for you to just feel more positive, more happy about your life. But I think that it was great that you touched on the negative side of that as well, because you have to look at the negatives. They happen. Negative things will happen to you every day, just like positive things do. But you have to look at them and honestly say, how much did this really affect me? The easy example, Matt, you and I, none of our kids are out driving around, but I'm sure they can try to relate to this one, is when you get cut off in traffic. You just lost 5 seconds out of your day. That's such a small amount, but people let that bother you for the rest of the day for whatever reason. Whereas in reality, was that something negative that happened to you? Yes, I got cut off on my way to work. But does that actually affect my day? Do you have to let that affect you in any sort of way? No, not at all.
So on top, in addition to that, whenever even at the end of the day, remind yourself of 3 good things. Even during the day, if something bad happens, or you're in a negative environment, think of there's 2 different approaches you can take. You can either ignore it and do something else, or you can try and figure out how can I turn this negative situation into positive. Mm-hmm. And that trains your mind to think about the positivity in your life all the time. The next thing is limiting your choices. So we live in a world of technology and information that is through the roof, and it almost seems like every day we have to make so many more choices than people had to make 20 years ago. There was one comedian that made a joke that he can't even go into the grocery store to get a toothbrush without Googling what's the best toothbrush out there. Every decision, we have too many choices to make and too much information to make that choice. So two things that I do, I often schedule my day in advance. In other words, I schedule tomorrow today so that I've made the choice before it has to be made. So I will, at the end of today, I will get out a notepad and I will jot down from 6 o'clock in the morning when I get up to 8 o'clock at night and 10 o'clock at night when I go to bed, what I'm going to be doing every half hour to hour. Now, the schedule's not always going to be perfect. Things will happen. Things will change, especially since I have 3 kids that I have to deal with and manage throughout the day.
But I think all of our kids can relate to flexible schedules.
But it gives you a sense of control, and it limits the amount of choices that you've made for that day. Camden, do you schedule in advance?
So I'm a little bit of an oddity because I try to. I will block out certain portions of my day, but what I've found is that for me, when I take the amount of time I put into scheduling out every bit and how good I am at keeping that schedule all day, I realized that it was not something that was going to work for me. So I'm glad you asked, because the other tool that I use that I think is real similar, and a lot of people could relate to this one, is picking out a handful of big tasks, your big goals, your big outcomes, I think is the best word for it for the day. My outcome, and the point of an outcome is because an outcome is something finished. You're not just going out and half doing something, you're actually going to go out and finish it. You know, whether for me in a business, it's making phone calls, sending out emails, setting up a new presentation, whatever type of different aspect that could be. I'm focusing on 3 big things that have to get done that day. Because then, to go back to your 3 positives at the end of the day, then no matter how unproductive I am the rest of the day, I can look back on it and say, hey, I did my 3 things that I was going to make myself do. And it gives you that sense of satisfaction and helps you to control your life, because when you limit what you have to do and you focus on a handful of things rather than everything, then you can take control over those few things and take control of your life.
And especially right now, I would like to say, you know, with the amount of willpower we have right now, which is not a ton, I mean, we burn more energy now because of what's going on than we would have normally last year, for example. It's okay to only get a few things done in a day that you wanted to get done. Don't overdo it. Don't try and overachieve or overaccomplish, because if you set a to-do list that's too ambitious, you run the risk of not getting it all done and then feeling bad that you didn't get it all done. It's okay, especially right now, to only get a few key things done each day. Because you always have tomorrow, and you always have the next day.
I think that's a great point.
Keep the to-do list manageable, I guess is what I would like to say.
Yeah. I was just going to jump in because there's one thing that you kind of alluded to a little bit there that I had in my notes that I wanted to mention. So you're a lawyer, I'm an entrepreneur. Those are definitely, if you go by the books, those are very stressful jobs that you and I feel that stress all the time. But it's important to realize that just because you have a stressful profession or something that people don't consider stressful doesn't mean that you can't feel stress. You can be stressed out for any little thing. You know, we all can be stressed. I used to think I was stressed out in high school. That's nothing compared to what I'm doing now. Does that mean I wasn't stressed out in high school? No, it's just relative. You know what I mean? Everything's relative in that kind of sense. So your stress threshold, there's your vocab word for the day, is whatever it is for you. That you can't apply that to your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, anyone. You can't apply that to someone else. That's your stress threshold. And to your point, Matt, with COVID and everything going on right now during the pandemic, all of our baselines is up through the roof already. So if you can only get a few things done today, or if you're just feeling stressed out and you can't tell why, it's okay, because it's natural, because we're in a crazier situation than we're used to. And so don't be worried if you're at your stress threshold more than you used to be. If you're stressed out more than you used to be, it's okay. It's natural. It's part of life.
So I think that that's a really good segue into the next one, which is social interaction. We are social human beings. So we are stressed right now that we can't be with each other and hang out with each other and this and that. But the other thing is, socially, we are all bound and genetically connected to the same concept, which is that you're not alone when you feel stress. That's a genetic thing that we all have. And especially right now when our survival is being challenged and we're worried about the virus and everything, that's a genetic trait that is in all of us to be stressed right now. So one thing that helps me is that when I'm really stressed or really anxious or even sometimes depressed is I know that I'm not alone. I know that everyone's feeling the same way, right? Because sometimes when you feel that way, you feel as if, well, I must be crazy, or I must be stupid, or I must be the only one that feels this way. But it's just not true. So whenever you feel that way, just know that everyone in the world right now is feeling what you're feeling. And it's completely normal and natural to feel that way. Along those lines, don't be afraid to talk to your friend about it. Don't be afraid to come to Camden or I about it. Don't be afraid to talk to your parents about it. We're social human beings. So when you're feeling down, don't keep it in. Find someone to share your feelings with, because what you're going to learn is they're going to say, well, you know what? That's funny you mentioned that, because I'm feeling that way too. And then you go, oh, really? I didn't know that. Tell me more. And then suddenly you realize, hey, I'm just like everybody else. This is normal.
Exactly. And I would just build off of that to the extent that, Matt, you and I are here to help them in life in a broader sense. And I think that's something that can kind of get lost inside all of the rugby. There's a reason we do these videos, the reason we talk about mindfulness and want to teach these life skills. If you have something going on, please reach out to us, because we want to help you out. But my favorite thing to say when I talk about coaching rugby, Matt, how many USA Eagles do you think I've coached? I'll give you a hint. 0. How many do you think I'm probably going to coach? If I go down this route for a long time, maybe a handful, right? Maybe I can get a USA job at some point. That's another thing. But you don't, your measure for success has to depend on you and you alone. When you look at your measure for success, if we as coaches looked at their measures for success as being a USA Eagle, we would be down on ourselves all the time, because realistically, that's probably not going to happen with many of the kids, if any of them. But if our level is to get them through high school, to help them to be more mindful of their community, to teach these life lessons, then that's something that we can control, and that's something we can actually do. And I think that's a big difference that people should understand.
I agree. Like Camden said, that's the reason we're doing these videos. We want to stay engaged. We want to interact with you guys, communicate with you guys. In addition, you may not be able to go out on the field. You may not be able to go meet with your buddies, but do try and find ways to stay involved in the community, whether it be to jump on Zoom with your buddies and have a talk with them. Stay involved with your friends, your family, because we are socially connected. We're social beings, and we get a little down sometimes if we're alone or we're not having these communications.
Right. And I think that's kind of, to use a little bit of a buzzword on it, physical distancing does not have to be social distancing. We have all this great technology out there to be able to do things like this and get on and have these talks with each other. And that's what's important, because you can still get out there and get that social aspect, even though it's not quite as good as actually being in the same room as each other. I know we all miss it here, at the Engage board, but it is something, and you got to do what you're able to do. Focus on what you can control, right, Matt?
Exactly. So the last one, which is actually near and dear to us, it's almost another word for being engaged, is to stay active and stay focused on what you're doing now. Mm-hmm. I would guarantee you that when you are stressed out or anxious or depressed, 95% of the time, what you're worried about is something that's either in the future or in the past. It's not about something that's happening right this second. So stay focused and active on what you are doing right now. Obviously, for adults, I highly encourage meditation, learning about breathing and learning about staying focused. But playing rugby or going out and throwing the ball around or going for a walk can be very engaging, very active, and very focused. Stay off the iPads as much as you can. Stay off the Facebook, the social media, and other things that keep you distracted from the now. You will find that when you are actively involved and engaged in something that is challenging and fun, your worry meter goes way down, because you're not worrying. You're engaged and you're actively participating in something. You don't have time to worry. You're doing something challenging and engaging. So whatever it might be, find something and focus on that instead of being distracted from the past, the future, social media, and all these other things that kind of take us away from what's happening right now.
I think that kind of goes full circle, because what that makes me think of is, going on the walk in the morning, or even in the afternoon, if I'm really struggling. Now it's so darn hot now, maybe we don't want to go for a walk in the afternoon, do something inside. But when you're active like that, you kind of give yourself that artificial energy of going out and doing something. And then you can take that momentum into the rest of your day. I don't know how many times and this is not a joke, I know it'll sound like one, I will stop and just knock out as many push-ups as I can right before I get on a business call, because I need to get some energy going. I feel too soft. What is another thing we teach, Matt? You don't want to be on your heels, right? You got to be on your toes. And if you're sitting back on your heels, what can you do about it? Get active, get focused, and move forward with a little bit of aggression, right? It's still rugby.
Exactly. Those are my 6. Again, I love talking about this stuff. We decided that we're going to do these sessions. We're only going to spend about 15, 20 minutes every Monday, just to keep it going, to keep it engaging, and to keep it short, because we all know that your lives and your schedules are busy. So if you would like to talk about this more, you have questions for Camden or me, please reach out to us. If there's something in particular you liked about what we said and want to know more, I'm happy to give you more tips and tricks. Again, my seminar is usually about 4 hours long. This was the Blitz version of that. But yes, next week, I think at around 2:00 on Monday, we're going to actually try and show some rugby footage and break some of it down, so that when we do get back out on the field, we can learn some things from watching tape and maybe applying those when we get back.
Oh yeah, I've heard a few different coaches say in my circles that if you're not getting better right now, it's just your choice, because there's so much film out there. Literally go on YouTube, type in rugby. Don't look at the big hit stuff, because those are all illegal. But go watch some rugby, and you can learn a lot just from sitting there watching it, even if you're not running around. And then the last thing I wanted to say, Matt, was a little bit of a call to action for all the kids and their parents, anyone else who is listening to this, is even if you haven't gotten into meditating, even if you think meditating is a weird thing, or whatever kind of preconceptions you have about that, just take some time this week and sit with your thoughts, and just sit and think. Maybe some light music. I like jazz when I do this, maybe some classical music, something light, but just sit and think about your day, and think about your future and all this different stuff. And that can do a lot for you. Don't feel bad if you fall asleep, because it'll happen the first several times you try to meditate, but just sit and think for as long as you can and challenge yourself with that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see y'all next week.